I would like to welcome all the participants as they are joining the episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times. We have our guests with us and we shall be starting shortly. Thank you very much for joining this interesting upcoming episode of Manav Rachna. In the next few minutes, we shall begin. Thank you so much. We all have been looking forward to this special episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times, where we have two very senior officers from the Indian Army. And we really cannot wait to begin our conversation with both the very senior officers to hear their stories and their experiences in the Army. So, as all the guests are joining us, and as everyone is also viewing us live from Facebook, I would like to welcome everyone who's taking out time and joining us for this very special webinar and episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times. One of our guests, General Chauhan, is already here with us, and we shall soon be beginning our conversations with him. General Chauhan, I hope I'm audible. It's clear with you before we can begin the webinar.
Yes.
Your voice is not very clear. Since we still have a minute to begin, I could. Your voice is not coming very clear at this point, sir. Would you like to please check? I would request you to please, maybe there's some last minute glitch with the internet. Would you like to please check? I'm not able to hear you at this point. I would once again like to welcome all the guests who are joining us for this special episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times. Thank you so much for joining us. We shall shortly also have Lieutenant General P.S. Mehta joining us for this special webinar. We do have General Chauhan checking on his internet so he can have seamless conversation with us when we start our episode of Happy Times with him, because we are all really looking forward to hearing their stories and their achievements. As the guests are continuing to join us for the webinar of Manav Rachna Happy Times. I would like to welcome everyone and thanking you for taking out your valuable time and joining us for this webinar. We have our guests with us, and very shortly we shall be beginning with conversations, listening to the interesting stories from their professional and personal lives. We all are really looking forward to being in conversation with our very, very senior officers from the Indian Army. Today's episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times is anyway a salute to the Indian Army. We really value all the efforts which are made, and we are waiting for our guests so that we can start our conversation with our guests this evening. Please stay with us and we shall begin shortly. Thank you for your patience. Manav Rachna, happy times for everyone who is joining us. I would like to welcome everyone who is joining us for the first time and welcome back if you've been enjoying our special sessions of Manav Rachna Happy Times before. Manav Rachna Happy Times started from May, and we all have had the opportunity to be interacting with experts from different fields, be it sports, be it entertainment industry. We have been in conversation with IAS officers. We have been in conversation with member of the parliament, and today we all cannot wait but to be in conversation with the real heroes. And we have two very senior officers, retired officers from the Indian Army, both Lieutenant General and decorated officers, because they have been awarded by the Government of India on several occasions, and their achievement and their work has always gone a long way in keeping us safe, keeping us protected. So while we are going to have the guests with us shortly, and we are going to be in conversation to listen to the interesting stories, I would request you to please patiently wait while the guests can be here. Thank you. As we can see on the screen right now, everyone who is joining us, the amount of pride that both the officers carry wearing their medals, wearing their army uniform, and something that we are all always in awe of, our senior officers from the Indian Army. We are waiting for the officers to join us so that we can be in conversation with them. Lieutenant General P.S. Mehta and Lieutenant General Dushyant Chauhan. Very soon we shall be in conversation with both the senior officers from the Indian Army. Thank you so much, as all the guests are joining us, and we shall begin with our conversation with both the decorated officers of the Indian Army. I'm sure that once we have both the officers with us, this initial wait of a few minutes is going to be all worth it. So please stay with us. I would like to thank all the guests, as all of you are joining us for another very interesting and inspiring episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times. We are soon going to have both the officers in conversation with us. I have personally been very excited, looking forward to hearing from the officers stories straight from them about their life. The life of an officer of an Indian Army is not easy, we are aware. As we sit comfortably in our homes, we have people who are protecting us, taking care of us selflessly with so much passion in their heart for their country and the countrymen. At this point, we are waiting to be in conversation with both the decorated officers of the Indian Army. Thank you so much for joining us. We have guests who are joining us on the Zoom platform, and we also have guests who are joining us on live on Facebook. Thank you so much for your patience. As I said, once we have the guests in conversation with us, it's all going to be worth it as we listen to their success stories, their hard work, and their achievements.
I can't hear you. Hello.
Good evening, General Mehta.
Good evening.
Good evening. We're all looking forward to being in conversation with you. I hope I'm clear and you can hear me clearly, sir.
Yes, I can do that. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. We shall begin with the happy times shortly, and allow me to see if General Chauhan can also hear us clearly. General.
Yes, I can do that. Good evening, sir.
And at this point, we also have Dr. Amit Bhalla, Vice President, Manav Rachna Educational Institutions. He may like to say informal hello before we can formally begin the show, sir.
Very, very good evening, General Mehta and General Dushyant. Good to see you here on this online platform with all of us at Manav Rachna today.
Thank you so much. A very good evening to you, Amit.
As all the guests are joining us on the Zoom platform and Facebook Live, I would like to welcome all the guests for taking out time. And as I said, I personally have been looking forward for this particular webinar, and we shall begin shortly. General Chauhan, are you able to hear me now? I think we just need to unmute General Chauhan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, sometimes it's really worth the wait. I can hear you clearly. I hope I'm audible. Is everything okay?
Absolutely perfect.
Wonderful. I think we were destined to start at this time. And yes, it is absolutely going to be worth the wait. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, Ritika Singh, would like to welcome you all to an interesting and a very inspiring episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times. Manav Rachna Happy Times is that platform where every week we interact with experts from different fields and learn from their journey, also find out interesting things about their life. So far, as I earlier mentioned, we had the opportunity to interact with Olympic gold medalists, we had IAS officer, member of parliament, but today we have the real heroes of our country. We have two very senior retired officers from the Indian Army. We have Lieutenant General Dushyant Chauhan and we have Lieutenant General P.S. Mehta. Today's episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times is a salute to the Indian Army. Thank you so much for being with us on this show. And before I can go any further, I would like Dr. Amit Bhalla, Vice President, Manav Rachna Educational Institutions, to please welcome everyone. So please.
Thank you, Ritika. Happy evening to everyone, and it's my pleasure to welcome General Mehta and General Dushyant on this online platform for sharing some happy moments, some positive moments in their life with the participants today. We have students, we have faculty who will be, interacting with you and listening to you and in this conversation with us. So whenever it comes to an army officer, we always think of few words which are like courageous, discipline, positive. We talk about passion, we talk about safety. So all these things give you a lot of energy, which is definitely required at this time when everybody is talking about negativities which are being spread by Corona. So with nobody better than you people can bring in some positivity in this environment, which is required to keep us going, so that we, instead of shortening our dreams, we should start dreaming big, and we should have that courage, and we should get that energy from your experience, your learning in your life, what all you have achieved, and how this world functions. For us and army men, once you sit and talk to them and listen about their incidents, how they have lived their life, how they have grown, it sometimes gives a lot of goosebumps to everyone. So I think that this is a nice moment for all of us, where the entire country is united because of Corona, I can say, because a lot of people got some time to spend with family, with friends, with their near and dear ones, and during this particular time. So even I got calls from few people with whom I had lost touch, because maybe they got some time to reflect back upon their old friends with whom we studied together. We had some good, sweet memories. We had some naughty memories together. So it was a good time for all of us. So I thank you once again for sparing out your time and being with us today on this platform. Thank you very much with us. With us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your welcome address. And before we can really take this episode, a special episode of Manav Rachna Happy Times, any further, I would request for a video to be played that I'd like everyone to see before we can be in conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much for that video. The video may be very short, but it covers the hard work, the dedication, the excellence of more than 40 years of both our guests. So each memory, everything that came on screen was very special. And now I take this privilege to formally introduce the guests for this evening. I would start with Lieutenant General Dushyant Chauhan. General Chauhan, recipient of one of the highest awards, Param Vishisht Seva Medal and Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, has served the Indian Army for more than 40 years. Coming from a village in Mainpuri district of Uttar Pradesh, he passed out from the National Defence Academy, then the prestigious Indian Military Academy, where he was awarded the Sword of Honor. The sword was presented by then Chief of Army Staff General Manekshaw for being the best all-round gentleman cadet. He was commissioned into 2nd Lancers Tank Regiment in 1972. And other than his professional life and competence, he has been very active in sports and outdoor activities. He enjoys a lot of activities, which we are going to find out as we interact with him a little later today. Sir, I would like to welcome you. And next, we have Lieutenant General P.S. Mehta. General Mehta is a second-generation Army officer, also the recipient of the prestigious awards Ati Vishisht Seva Medal and Vishisht Seva Medal. He has his parentage in Shogapura, Badgam and Singhpura, Baramulla of Jammu and Kashmir. As we saw in the video, he is the first Sikh officer from Kashmir Valley who has been elevated to the rank of Lieutenant General. He completed his studies from Presentation Convent School, Srinagar, did his graduation, his BSc, in 1977 from Udhampur. Having passed out as the first in order of merit gold medalist from the Officers Training Academy, Chennai, he commissioned into the elite armored regiment Skinner's Horse in 1978. In his service career spanning over 40 years, General Mehta has held many important and prestigious appointments and served in various sectors pan-India. He has also served the counter-insurgency operations at Jammu and Kashmir as Colonel General Staff. He too has hobbies and interests that we would share as we are in conversation with him a little later. But now is that time that we all have been waiting for, to listen to the stories and listen to the life of our two very senior officers. First of all, sir, once again, I would like to welcome you both. Thank you very much for sparing time and taking our time. And now we have a lot of students, we have faculty, as Amit sir mentioned, we have a lot of people who are listening to us. And General Chauhan, my first question would be to you, sir. You are carrying the legacy from your grandfather's time. Your grandfather was in the Gwalior army, and then your father was also in the army. So was it like an unset expectation from them, or conditioning that made you join, or was this also your own choice?
At the very outset, I must thank Amit, Ranjan, you, Ritika, Talwar, and the entire Manav Rachna team to have given me this honor and opportunity to interact with your team of the staff and the young people. And before I answer your specific question, I must also mention that in General Mehta, you've got one of the finest officers amongst us this afternoon to be interacting with your team, because as you'll get to know him, and you already know a lot about him, he's 10 feet tall, as indeed is, of course, Ranjan and Amit and your entire team. Now, getting back to your specific question, yes, my grandfather was in the Gwalior army. Actually, we come from Mainpuri district in Uttar Pradesh, which is east of Agra. It is more famous for dacoits and bandits and what have you. And it's not too far from Agra, from Kanpur, where Vikas Dubey has just been in the news. But that apart, my grandfather joined the Gwalior army because he was in the cricket team of his college in Gwalior, in Agra, I'm sorry. And at that time, the state forces used to develop various kinds of teams. Like Jaipur used to have the best polo team, Patiala used to have the best cricket team, and similarly, various other states used to have such good teams. So my grandfather happened to be a very, very good cricketer. He was the cricket captain of the Balwant Rajput College in Agra. So then His Highness, who was the grandfather of Madhavrao Scindia, he got to know that my grandfather was a good cricket player, and he wanted to develop and groom a team in Gwalior State Forces to be able to meet the best cricket team amongst the states at that point in time, which was the team of the Patiala family or the state of Patiala. So that's how my grandfather was given a commission in the Gwalior army, and then of course he retired as a colonel, because in the Gwalior army used to have only one general who happened to be always the mama of the Maharaja, and they used to have. Sorry, I lost it one second.
No, that's fine, sir.
I don't know if you can
We
see
can
me.
hear you very clearly, sir. We can hear you very clearly.
Okay, I'll try and get back to that thing.
Sure.
So that's how my grandfather was in Gwalior Army, and then of course my father joined the Gwalior Army, and he was a major before partition, and then he was in the Gwalior Lancers, the horse cavalry, and then thereafter when India became independent, he joined the police, and he was a superintendent of police in Madhya Pradesh, and that's how I sort of got an interest in outdoor activities through these two my forefathers, shall we say, and that's how I joined a school called St. Peter's College, Agra, where we had these Irish fathers, and there was a lot of emphasis on outdoor activity. And thereafter, I joined Sainik School, Rewa, and then, having been influenced by various people, I joined the National Defence Academy. So this is in brief.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey about joining and how you were inspired by your family to be joining the army. And sir, of course, for General Mehta, I would like to ask you the same question. You know, your father was also in the army, and it would be interesting to hear how you joined the army. As I understand, I have seen some of the interviews. Joining the army was not your first preference. You wanted to do something else, sir. So please tell us that interesting bit.
At the very outset, a very hearty thank to you and Mr. Amit and the team of Manav Rachna.
Thank you, sir.
I'm really honored and privileged to be on this platform today. As also, life is a very small place where you have great coincidences. I have visited Manav Rachna earlier, and I know General Dushyant Chauhan, who spoke so well about me. He's a very dear senior and a friend. And since he gave his background of Gwalior State Forces, my regiment, Skinner's Horse, was the first regiment raised in 1803 as the first cavalry regiment of Mahadji Scindia No. 1. So we have a connect in Gwalior that way, and I'm connected to General Dushyant Chauhan. We both are from the Elite Armored Corps, the tank regiments, and we have a lot of commonalities. Well, as you said, that I did not have my first choice as army, although my father was the first commissioned officer, Sikh, from the Kashmir Valley. He was a guide to 4 Kumaon Battalion during the 1947 Kabaili raid in Srinagar, where Pakistan wanted to capture the Jammu and Kashmir state. So he was a guide to the battalion, and thereafter he was commissioned to the Corps of Artillery, the Top Khana. And my complete family were more or less doctors, or they were from artillery. So I wanted to actually, when the situation came to join army, I stepped into Armored Corps. But before that, I was a science student, like you read out. I was a BSc with botany, zoology, chemistry, and organic and organic chemistry. And I was also appeared from a pre-medical examination. My first choice was to venture in life and see the world. So my first choice was join Merchant Navy. But as destiny would have it, I passed the Combined Defence Services examination, and the first interview came to Allahabad to join the army. I got through, medically fit, and before either of the two could call me, I was called to join the Officers Training Academy in Madras those days. So that's how I joined army. But let me assure all the students and faculty there who are hearing us that army is a great place where it gave us all the adventure that one was looking forward to. And yes, thanks to the great Indian Army that I got an opportunity to visit 20 foreign countries during my career of 40 years plus in the army. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, sir. And, we've also seen in the video as we were playing, General Chauhan, to earn the Sword of Honor is a very big achievement. Please do share something about that, and what was the feeling when you earned the Sword of Honor?
Well, you see, like in every institution, there is competition for performing well, and there's a lot of adventure in sports. So after having spent 3 years at the National Defense Academy. When I went to the Indian Military Academy, and I happened to be good in sports. So the first thing that happened after I reached there, during our first term in the Indian Military Academy, which happened to be the third term because the first 2 terms are not applicable to people who come from the National Defense Academy. So there was something called the Dehradun District Athletics Meet.
Okay.
So as luck would have it, God was kind to me. I was a good sportsman. Those days I was doing 100 meters in a little less than 11 seconds. And I was perhaps amongst the first 10 in the country at that time doing it under 11 seconds. So when IMA took part in the Dehradun District Athletics, I won the 100 meters, the 200 meters and the 400 meters, which were my events. However, they said that, look, some best athlete person who was a good thrower, he would throw javelin, he would throw hammer, he would throw shot put and discus. He would become the best athlete because he's going to win 4 events. So you take part in more events. So I took part in the 800 meters also. I came first in that as well. Having come first in 100, 200, 400 and 800 meters. Then they said, okay, you're a sprinter, so you do long jump and hop, step and jump also. Again, I won those. God was kind to me. So having won 6 events, I was declared the best athlete of the Dehradun district. So that was taken very, very kindly by the Indian Military Academy. And I was not too bad at service subjects and academics. So during the course of the training in the Indian Military Academy, I excelled in all those because if you are good in outdoors in the army, you generally do well in all other fields. So that's how I became the best all-round cadet at the time of passing out. And as has been mentioned, General SHFJ Manekshaw, he came as the chief guest, and I was honored to receive the Sword of Honor with him, which you saw in the photograph.
Yes, sir.
So that's how I got the Sword of Honor. There was no, shall we say, effort other than, shall we say, working hard and doing well in all the training curriculum, as also in extracurricular activities and in sports. So that's it.
I think, yes, you have covered it all. It's about working hard in every field. And I think in your case, you doing very well in sports really helped you. So thank you so much for sharing that. And now I'd like to ask General Mehta. Sir, you're the first Sikh officer from the Kashmir Valley who was elevated to the rank of Lieutenant General. We saw that. And, I'd also read and also heard that you are also the first Short Service Commission Lieutenant General who became and commanded the Strike Corps of the Indian Army. And, both of these are very remarkable achievements. I would request you to please share something about both of these.
Well, Ritika, because of my father, who became the first commissioned Sikh officer when during partition, Kabaili raid, the family had migrated to Delhi, to Kingsway camp as migrant from Jammu and Kashmir, and thereafter to Chakrata. My father managed to do his graduation the last year in Delhi and got into the army. So when with this background, we got a very good exposure, and as you know that Indian Army keeps an officer about 2 to 3 years in one station. We traveled, in fact, pan-India with my father, and it was a great experience. And one got motivated and got used to this beautiful life. And that was one of the reasons. And like I told you, when I was called to join the Officers Training Academy at Chennai in 1977 for training, I told my group of friends in my college, now that I'm going to join the Indian Army instead of my dream to join the Merchant Navy or get into the medical line, I promise you that I'll do well and come back. And like General Chauhan said, even I had represented Udhampur district in large number of athletic meets. We were very good in sports and adventure. There were no distractions in life like televisions, phones, mobile phones and all these things, the smartphone. everything and anything that was available to us was adventure and sports, and we excelled in that. So physically we were very good. So I excelled in that, in the adventure as well as sports, and I pursued that during my training in Chennai, and having done well in all the events, including academics, I came to be passing out as the first in the order of merit. I got the prestigious gold medal, and that is how the push came up. And probably what was inside was the determination and persuasion that I have to come first and have to do well in the academy. So God was kind of achieved it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think as the students and a lot of others are listening, even so far, whatever you have shared, there are a lot of learnings, whether you talk of excellence, whether you talk of determination. So moving forward, General Chauhan, I have a question for you. In fact, I also have a clip. Let me see if I can share that. It is a clip actually from one of the newspapers back in 1962. Not sure if I can show you that. Yes, that is the clip I'd like to share. We have been talking about the Galwan Valley since then, and we are talking about it till date. Back in the day, you were also a major and you were posted in the Galwan Valley. How was your experience, and what are your thoughts on this matter? How challenging is the terrain for the soldiers to be posted there? So we'd really like you to please share some of your thoughts on this matter.
Yes, I have been posted in Ladakh, and to be specific, in eastern Ladakh, in the same brigade in which the Pangong Tso or the Pangong Lake is. As you are aware, the Pangong Lake is 135 kilometers, of which 45 kilometers is in our country, or shall we say it is under our control, and the balance is under Chinese control. So very often you will be hearing the word finger 4, finger 5, finger 8, and so on and so forth. I have physically traversed these and been there on ground on the other side, that is the northern side of the Pangong Lake. And those days, I was there from 1985 December till 1988 February. In those days, the perception of the line of control as far as we were concerned was finger 8. As far as Chinese was concerned, perhaps it was a little more this side. They keep talking about finger 4. But very often we used to bump into their patrols while we used to go there. We used to have, cigarettes exchanged and pleasantries exchanged in whatever language they understood and sign language.
Okay.
And the Galwan area, that was further north. At that point in time, the accessibility to what is called Daulat Beg Oldie, which is beyond even further, was only by helicopters. So at the moment, I'll leave aside the Pangong Lake or Pangong Tso part, and I'll talk about Galwan and the Daulat Beg Oldie area. So we used to go there by helicopters. But at that point in time, the hostilities were not there. The two armies would meet each other, shall we say, patrols. Patrol means about 40-30 men going to a point and getting back. That is called patrolling. So at that time, it was not so aggressive. But I'll say a few words about the Chinese. The Chinese have this, shall we say, philosophy of what is referred to very often as salami slicing. But in other words, they are expansionists. They like to take over as much territory as possible. They have not only been doing it with us, they've been doing it with many countries in the South China Sea. South China Sea, just because its name is South China Sea, doesn't mean it belongs to China. However, they have taken over 3-4 islands in that area. There is something called Mischief Reef. There is something called Paracel Islands, and many such islands there. And they have this habit of bullying. And the small littoral states of the South China Sea have not been really confronting them. The only people who confronted them was in 1979 when they attacked Vietnam. Vietnam gave them a bloody nose. Even in our context, in 1967, when they tried to occupy some of our areas in the northeast, they were given a bloody nose. But a word about the Chinese, you know, while they talk to you on the diplomatic level, it will not permeate down to the military, and it will not permeate down to the people who are trying to grab your territory or who are staying or who have come into your territory. So very often the diplomats will talk to each other or the top military leaders will talk to each other, but it will not permeate into action on the ground because it will not be passed down. So there's a disconnect. And perhaps that disconnect with them is by design. In the context of Galwan incident of 15th of June, what basically happened was that the people who were asked to go back, they had actually gone back a little. But the Western Army commander of theirs, he thereafter sent people who were good in Kung Fu and who were good in fighting. So the people who had vacated that place had been replaced by muscle men. And that is how they attacked Colonel Babu and his two sepoys who had gone with him, because what they had done was, when Colonel Babu had gone looking for a major and some more people who had gone earlier and who had not come back, so they asked them to come alone, that is Colonel Babu and two people, and they beat them up. But you must give it to our boys. We had the Bihar regiment people there. We had the Sikhs in 3 Punjab. We had the Sikhs in artillery, and we had other people. And when they learnt that their commanding officer had fallen, thereafter they just went into a frenzy. While we lost about 20 people, people say Chinese lost about 43. Now coming back to the incident or to your specific question, was that area active at that time? No. However, in 1962, the Chinese had gone back from Galwan in the month of, I think, June, July. But in October, they attacked India. But at that time, the Indian army was not deployed there. The Indian army was there in a very, very sparse and small, shall we say, elements, wherein they were only doing what is referred to as policing. That was the Indian Army of 1962 and not the Indian Army of 2020. And if they do it to us, we are going to give them a bloody nose. I don't really know if I've answered your question, but I've given you a little generic explanation about the area.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, sir. Thank you. And, moving on, sir, my next question is to you, General Mehta. You are the son of the Valley. And, so I have this next question for you. You've served the Indian Army for 40 years. You've grown up in Kashmir, and most people, I remember visiting Kashmir, all of those nice things happened. The problems only grew in the late 80s. So what, in your opinion, went wrong? What are your thoughts about this, sir?
Can you clarify your question again, please?
So my question to you is that most of the problems that we know that happened in Kashmir were only in the late 80s. And before that, things were normal. People would visit, they would go for holidays. So what, in your opinion, went wrong? If you could, share that briefly with us.
Okay. You see, when the partition took place, I'll take you 5 or 10 years before that. It was Muhammad Ali Jinnah's dream to have, firstly, a pure secular Muslim country. And the idea of having a two-nation theory came up. And the Britishers actually were very smart. They had a very far foresight. They could look 20 or 100 years beyond what they want to achieve. So towards the end, during the 1940s, when the first and second Anglo-Sikh war had taken place in 1841 and 1846, like that, and in the Bengal, the Greater Bengal, where there was one Bengal, the Bengalis and the Sikhs opposed the Britishers toward the late, or I would say mid-19th century. They were irked, reversals taken by the British, and including their families. So as a design, this two-nation theory came up, and the British wanted to cut India into two before they went back, and they wanted to avenge their deaths and reversals that they saw in this country. Now coming, Muhammad Ali Jinnah also came up and supported this fact, and unfortunately our Indian polity that time, to name Mr. or Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who also fell for the theory unfortunately and did not listen to other people who were the great politicians like Mahatma Gandhi or Sardar Patel, and the partition came through. Now when partition came through, from that day onward, from 1947, I referred to you in the beginning that 1947, the Kabaili raid took place and the Pakistan disrespected the international border that was drawn by Radcliffe for creating Pakistan and India. This border was drawn on the map and it was demarcated and it was also given on ground. Now, unfortunately, the Pakistanis did not respect that and by deceit launched this raid into Jammu and Kashmir with Kabailis, who are the tribal areas from Pashtun and the northwest areas of Pakistan. In fact, those days known as Northwest Frontier. From there, about 10,000 or maybe more Lashkars were brought into the area of Muzaffarabad and three-pronged attack came into Punch, Jammu Kashmir, in the area of Kashmir and even in Ladakh. So coming to your specific question, life was good. Now there were three communities who were living generally with each other: Kashmiri Muslim, Pandits and the Sikhs. There were sprinklings of Christians and other communities also, Buddhists, but very small in number. So these three major communities had a very good interaction with us, and in the normal life, these three communities had a very good inter-community or inter-communal relationship. They respected each other. So it carried on till 1980s, like what you were asking.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, the government of India has been sleeping on this subject of the demands and aspirations of Kashmiri Muslims. The Muslims, this idea was sown in their mind by Sheikh Abdullah. And Sheikh Abdullah was also a very clever man. He had a vision of creating a pure Muslim state, the Kashmir division of Jammu and Kashmir out of those 5 divisions. So with that, he kept on pursuing that. He coaxed Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru to oust Maharaja Hari Singh out of the state in 1947. In October, he was moved to Jammu, and from Jammu he was moved to Mumbai, and from there he eventually went to Italy, and unfortunately he passed away there, never to come back. Well, things were good. Now this insurgency, when it was gathering speed, it happened as a brainchild of Pakistan and ISI, as we all are aware. They were pursuing this. Kashmiris was known to be very weak and weak community in terms of fighting and all those things. But unfortunately, because of Pakistan and ISI support, nearly 40,000 people are supposed to have crossed the line of control. Kashmiris, locals, gone across into POK. They were trained, armed, equipped, and then infiltrated back into the valley. Unfortunately, our country was sleeping. Our intelligence was sleeping. It was a national intelligence failure. And then this whole commotion or the insurgency started from 1989 onwards. And it carried on. It had its effect for the last 30 years. It's seen up and down. The security forces have done a tremendous job. They brought down the insurgency levels to real low levels many times, but unfortunately the political processes never took on. And the reason, basic reason of the political processes not taking place was there was a mindset in Delhi which has now been broken by the present government, and that mindset was keep it aside. Anything, then it was only, crisis management kind of an arrangement. When there was a crisis in Valley, they would look towards it, sort it out. Once it is okay, forget about it. And this, looking at crisis and then forgetting about it, was the basic reason of all this whole problem came up. And from 89 onward, when the gun was picked up, there was no looking back. So today, after the political process, it is known as a singular highest political maneuver that has been launched by our Honorable Prime Minister of abrogating the state, abrogating the Article 370 or 35A, as also breaking the state into union territories. That platform of Azadi that was being pushed into the mind of Kashmiri Muslims by Pakistanis went for a 6. And now the Kashmiris say that never ever in 7 lives they will ask for Azadi. They've lost their iconic state, Jammu and Kashmir, and today it's a union territory. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for giving us such clear details coming from your side, sir. It was very, very informative. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I have the next question for General Chauhan. Sir, we are aware that in the army, the soldiers are taught only to win because there are no runner-ups. Either you're winning or you're shot. So as a leader, how do you really motivate the soldiers to always win?
Well, this is a very good question. First of all, in the army, we follow what is referred to as value-based leadership. What we do is we demonstrate, we lead from the front. So those of you who've been near the Indian Military Academy, you must have read the motto of Chetwood. Lord Chetwood was the one who raised the Indian Military Academy. It reads, "The safety, honor and welfare of the country comes first, always and every time. The honor, welfare and comfort of the men you command comes next, always and every time. Your own ease, comfort and safety come last, always and every time." One of the reasons why our leadership is so good that our officers lead from the front. And you've got to be better than them in physical activities. Intellectually, obviously, you are definitely better, you are more educated, but you have to lead from the front. You have to set examples. If there is going to be some danger somewhere, then you had better be the first one to go there. If a ditch has to be crossed, then the officer has to be the first one to cross. So that is the value-based leadership which we follow in the Indian Army, and which always gets us successes. Which is why you will hear and read that we have been losing or having had a lot of wounded officers because we lead from the front. And this is how we get successes. Our soldiers look upon us. Like a classic example was this 15th June incident in Galwan, when the soldiers learned that their CO or the commanding officer, who for them is God, had fallen. They just let loose. They charged into the Chinese, but Chinese were uphill and these people were downhill. And in that altitude of more than 14,000 feet, where there is shortage of oxygen, these people just let them have it. They bayoneted them, they broke their necks and what have you. So to come to your specific question, how do we exercise leadership? It is basically by having the highest values and basically by leading by example.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sharing that. It's once again a valuable lesson that we all will keep in mind. And something similar but slightly different perspective, I would like to ask General Mehta. So why does the nation always turn to the Indian Army in times of need? Whether there are internal security issues, situation of counter-terrorism, communal violence, disaster relief. So, and all this is in addition to the primary task of defending our borders.
That's a very nice question, Ritika. Indian Army is that association or an organization which has maintained the standards, the customs and traditions which we picked up from the British time, British era, the British Army, and we have never let them go till today. In fact, if you look back before partition, look who made what did the Britishers get into India? They bought the constitution, they bought roads, they bought irrigation systems, the railways, Indian revenue system. Your parliament was made by the Britishers, your north and south blocks were made by them. The army defense forces were made by the Britishers. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru never wanted army. Soon after partition, he scrapped the most important appointment of the country, which was called as Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Forces. The last one was Lord Mountbatten. The moment we got independence in 1947, he scrapped that appointment And look, after 72 years, now we are instituting the same appointment called as the CDS. So, who's General Bipin Rawat? Now, you know, these traditions and values and systems have to be maintained. Indian Army is so disciplined. We are guided by the Indian Army Acts and by the Indian Army, the manual of military law and academy law that we have. We follow it in letter and spirit. And we have not let the system go even one bit, be whatever the situation. So therefore, we are very well organized, we are systematic, organizational abilities are the highest with us. And to come back to another point, look at our police system. Have you seen policemen on the road? You must be seeing UP police now on the television. Look at their dress. They're wearing the angochas on their uniform. Their shirts are out. There's no discipline. There are no shoes. The kind of caps they wear. There is no uniformity. So we have maintained a uniform. Unfortunately, or I would say it is good now that the other central armed police forces are adopting our systems, our methodologies. So it will, in the long run, maybe another 10 to 20 years from now, the central armed police forces will also become as good as the Indian Army. Now the national disaster relief, flood relief, we have become the first resort, as we have been hearing about, is because the politicians, the district administration, starting from commissioner, collectors in the district, they are supposed to do all that. But the first thing that happens is requisition the army. Whether it's the communal right, whether it is floods, earthquakes, disaster, whatever it be. Because they have faith on us and they know our potential. So we have maintained that potential. We maintain our traditions, we maintain our equipment. You know, we do Shastra Puja every year. Every kind of tool and equipment is managed, done, kept battle-worthy 24/7. I think these are the reasons why the government looks at Army always.
Again, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, sir. Very, very true, as you just mentioned. And with that, moving on to General Chauhan. So, we are aware that you were the Director General Military Intelligence, which is seen as one of the most important positions. So how challenging or interesting was this assignment? We would like you to please share and any incidents if they come to your mind.
Yes, I was the Director General of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Now, you see, when the Kargil War took place, the post-Kargil War, there was a committee appointed that was called the Kargil Committee, which was headed by K. Subramaniam. And Mr. K. Subramaniam was a great strategic thinker. In fact, his son is the foreign minister today. So Mr. K. Subramaniam, while carrying out assessment of what all needed to be learnt from the Kargil episode or Kargil fiasco or whatever you'd like to call it. So as General Mehta brought out, that post-partition, when India became independent, Nehru wanted that we are a nation of punch shields, so we don't want an army. We'll just keep some ceremonial troops. And then we learnt a very, very hard lesson, one in 1948 and then in 1962. So coming back to the issue, the intelligence organizations in the country were vertically reporting to their own respective departments, and there was no coordination, especially in the three services. The military intelligence, the Air Force intelligence, and the naval intelligence, they were reporting to their own respective bosses. And there was no central agency to coordinate intelligence and to cull out important information from that. So, post the Kargil Committee report, there was a group of ministers which did some homework, and thereafter some decisions were, shall we say, given out. In that, the Defense Intelligence Agency was created, and the Defense Intelligence Agency was coordinating intelligence from the three services. At the national level, we have the Intelligence Bureau, which is responsible for intelligence within the country. Then we have something called Research and Analysis Wing, which is responsible for intelligence, which is external from outside or off outside. Obviously, their priorities are neighboring countries and so on and so forth. And then we have what is referred to as the National Technical Research Organization, which has a lot of gizmos, but amongst other things, they have aircraft which take photographs from 40,000 plus feet where they cannot be intercepted. Then they have satellites. Similarly, the Defense Intelligence Agency has something called signal intelligence. They have also defense satellites. So, in other words, these four intelligence agencies within the country, they interact with the government, they interact with the National Security Advisor, and the DIA, or the Defense Intelligence Agency, which I was heading prior to retirement, picks up intelligence inputs from various agencies and coordinates intelligence between the three services. So, really speaking, there was coherence after the Defense Intelligence Agency came into being, and as General Mehta brought out, now the Chief of Defense Staff, or the CDS, has been created, and there is an animal or a structure called the Integrated Defense Staff, which is headed by the CDS. The Defense Intelligence Agency comes under that, and tomorrow, when something happens, a war breaks out, the Chief of Defense Staff, with inputs from the Defense Intelligence Agency, would coordinate operations between the three services. The Chief of Defense Staff would also be responsible for ensuring that there is capability which is equally and evenly and on requirement basis distributed between the three services to create capability. So, coming back to your specific question as to what my experience was in the Defense Intelligence Agency, obviously what I could tell you, I can tell you, and a lot of things which I can't tell you, which is in all fairness. But in brief, it is basically for coordinating intelligence between the three services, providing intelligence to the Chief of Defense Staff.
Right. That's very, very informative, sir. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And now I have a small picture to share with everyone before, I can really talk about it. That's for you, General Mehta. Seeing your country's flag is always such a proud moment. It can bring so many emotions in a person. When we all drive to work and see our flag in Manav Rachna, we feel this every day. When your country's flag is hosted in a foreign land, it is done only when you conquer a territory or when you win in sports. And since you are an avid sports person, what are your thoughts on both?
But from being a national and a nationalist or an Indian national and being a sportsman, the two situations that you said, that you see your flag outside, but being an army man and services who defend this country, and also if urged to go and capture enemy territory, the first thing that you do in a territory captured is put your own national flag, like we had done in the previous wars. So a national flag is the highest emblem or the symbol or the icon for the Indian Defence Forces. We always respect it. It's closest to our heart, and that's what our aim is. We defend the sovereignty of our country under the flag. We take the oath of that, and we are ready to sacrifice our life, die for our country, die for a flag. And these are some of the thoughts that are ingrained into each and every cadet or a raw recruit who are under training in all the three services, that you have to defend the honor and of your country and the sovereignty of a country. The flag is the highest for us. In fact, Mr. Jindal had started an organization called the Flag Foundation of India. I will not go into the background why he was not allowed, but in specific to say that at some time he was not allowed to put flag of India at various places that he did. But then he proved it through a legal process that any Indian can carry the national flag, put it on his house, put it anywhere he feels like, but respect it. And there is a law which I think the students should know, that why is the flag lowered every evening? If the flag is to be kept up At night, it has to be illuminated and lit. It should be visible. In darkness, you don't put your flag up. At the dusk, we have the retreat sounded by a bugler, and we pull it down, and with honor, it goes back to its place. And next morning, on Reveille, the first bugle gets again put up on the mast, and it starts fluttering.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And now, moving on to General Chauhan, sir, I have a bit of a different question now. You know, sports and fitness are very integral, are an integral part to the army. And back in the days, you won the Blazer in football. So for most people who are, listening to us, Blazer in football is like the highest award in sports that anyone could get. And you would beat even the much younger officers in 100 meters, 200 meters race. And even today, we are aware that you sometimes get up as early as 3:30 in the morning to go for your cycling. So, what message would you like to give to all of us and the youngsters who are listening to you?
I would definitely like to give a message of physical fitness. But before that, I would also like to give a message to all the young people that join the armed forces. They give you great opportunity of adventure. They give you challenges. You get to do mountaineering. You get to, go into various kinds of terrain where there is snow, where there are glaciers. You get to stay in cantonments. You can, drive around in your Harley Davidson motorcycles, which you can't do in a city. And it's a great organization. So if you join the armed forces, physical fitness will come to you naturally. In the army or in the Air Force and the Navy, the first thing in the morning is about 60 minutes of physical training, in which you first do endurance, you run for about 20 minutes, then you do various physical fitness exercises. Our PT instructors, physical training instructors used to tell us, Baju Dhad Tang. Now what did that mean? You had to strengthen your arms, you had to strengthen your chest, and you had to strengthen your quadriceps and hamstring muscles. So I've carried on that, and God has thus far been kind to me. These days I cycle around. Come November, I'll be 70 years of age, but I'm enjoying myself. I don't call myself old at all. I can perhaps say that I'm in the middle age, but the physical fitness and cycling is, shall we say, complementary to each other, and it's great fun. Of course, yoga is also there, and if you get an opportunity, you must do yoga, do a lot of breathing exercises, and physical activities give you not only physical release, they also give you mental release. So when you are, disturbed in everyday happenings on some issue or the other, get to the gym, do an exercise or do some exercises, and you will feel light. Apart from the fact that you'll sweat, you will avoid cholesterol, you will avoid blood pressure, you will avoid sugar-related illnesses, and you'll remain physically fit. So that's my message, and make the most of youth. This is the time to really keep yourself physically fit, and it will stand you in good stead in your later years.
Thank you, sir. That's lovely. Thank you so much. We'll definitely keep that advice and try and be physically fitter. And, all the listeners, they can never imagine that these serious, responsible men also have a lighter side to them. So, General Mehta, I know that occasionally you also get to cooking. Don't worry, you will never have uninvited guests. But I think you cook very nice food and it has a Kashmiri touch to it. So tell us some of your favorite, things that you make.
Yeah. Like what General Chauhan just mentioned, just before I answer your question is, in the army or in the defense services, we say rubbing shoulders with your men. So we got to rub shoulders in the sports fields. And you have to prove your worth in the sports field to the Johnnies, to our soldiers, whatever service you are in. And the term they use when they see an officer has proved himself to be a very good sportsman who's scoring goals, whether it's hockey, basketball, football, volleyball, wherever. They say the term that use कि ये साहब बहुत fighter आदमी है. That is how they refer to the sports people. So you have to prove yourself apart from leadership to the men that you are solid on ground. Well, now coming to your question, you know, army is a beautiful, adventurous life. And not now, but earlier days when we were youngsters and even, let's say, 60s, 70s, there was nothing to distract us in the life. Like there was no other thing which would keep us stupidly busy in our home, like television, all these, you know, there were no computers, there were no laptop, there were no smartphones. So what we looked at was adventure. We would go out, we would do shooting or shikar. In good old days, there used to be shikar clubs. But nowadays we can't do that. It's prohibited. But we do angling. General Chauhan is a very great angler. You showed some pictures of his in the water and fish and all. He's been all over, I would say, major parts of the world to do fishing. He's very well known in his fishing and he's too good. And I'm also his student in that, learning a great deal from him. So when you do all this and you do survival fitness, incidentally, in my 40 years, since I was a tank man, I have spent 28 years in the desert terrain. So we have to live out and we have to know as part of our survival how to cook. And then, of course, like the Kashmir background with those beautiful wazwans of Kashmir, one naturally got to cooking. So I can assure you, I can cook, I can bake, I can make sweets, I can make ice creams.
Oh, nice.
And at certain occasions, the General Chauhan is smiling. I have proved it to him when we have been on some fishing outings and all. I used to be the head chef of this team. So I can cook, I can narrate any kind of recipe that you want to grow myself.
Great, great.
Including pickles.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. And with that, while General Chauhan is smiling, we do know. I'm not sure how if he's as good, but he can make very good custard. I'm told that he can make that in 5 minutes. And he's also very particular about his morning tea. He is the one who makes it for himself. Is that right, sir?
Yeah, I make good caramel custard, but I'm not 5% as good as Pradeep Mehta is, as General Mehta is. But I'm all right with caramel custard. Yes, I like good tea, and I make my own tea in the morning because, like, somebody must have told you, I think Malvinder, that I get up very
Yes.
and I get ready for my cycling outing, which is for 1 hour. So yes, I am fond a little bit of cooking, though I make a hash of it most of the time. But caramel custard I make well. But Pradeep Mehta is very, very good.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, sir, I think we are almost nearing to the end of this particular episode. Much that I would like to be in conversation longer than this. But you have touched upon some very important issues, be it those of the country, whether it is the skill on part of individuals, whether it is leadership, motivation, army as an institution. I'm sure everyone, once we leave, we have certainly better understanding and a lot of more interest that we'd like to, find out and be better informed as individuals. But, before I can really call it a day, we have a lot of people who are listening to us. We have students, we have teachers who joined us today. So from both of you, I would like you to give one message to everyone. Maybe it could be General Dushyant, if you could be the first one to give that message.
Well, the only message that I would like to give is that take life as it comes, do your bit, never get perturbed, and everything will happen on its own time. Since you mentioned it, there is a doha by Rahim. It says, "Dheere dheere रहमना, धीरे से सब होए, माली सींचे 100 घड़ा, ऋतु आए फल होए." What I'm trying to say is, don't be tense. Everything will happen in its own time. Take life as it comes. Also have a streak where you should be able to, let your hair down. Don't be too serious in life, but be committed, be dedicated, be responsible. When somebody gives you a task or an assignment, do it. And if you can't do it, then get back to that person than to say later on that you couldn't do it. So my little small message would be, enjoy life, have time for everything, work while you work, play while you play, keep yourself physically fit, and be a balanced all-round personality. And don't take tension. And if somebody is bothering you, go to him and have a word with him, or go and have a word with her. That, look, this is what it is. I have misunderstood what you said or what has been implied. Can you please clarify? And I'm sure relationships will always improve. There is another one, that don't sort of break relationships for shall we say non-issues. There's another Rahim ka doha on this. It says, Rahiman dhaga prem ka, mat todo chatkaye, टूटे तो जुड़े नहीं, जोड़ो गांठ पड़ जाए. What it really means is, don't let relationships snap. Let them go to an elastic limit, but not to the plastic limit. When we say plastic limit, that means a snap will take place or a rupture will take place. So take life in the stride. Don't get worried. And in this world, we can't change anybody. People will remain what they are. So learn to accept them that way. So enjoy yourselves. Be happy. And a message for the girls as well. There's a great opportunity in the armed forces for the ladies to join. So if you have flair for adventure, no harm joining the armed forces. All the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you. And now we would like to hear from General Mehta.
Ritika, the first thing that I want to say is, because since we are all Indians and we are addressing for the futuristic generation and for the Indian youth, both boys and girls, I want to make one point very clear to you. You know, the Indian way of thinking. We Indians sit down. Like after this show, I'm sure a lot of students will sit down somewhere outside or in the classroom or wherever. 10, 15 friends will sit together and they start talking. We will do this, we will do that, I'll do a double MBA, I will do this, I'll earn a lot of money, we will do this. And after that session is over, everybody goes back to his hostel or homes or rooms and forgets about what the hell they had talked about. But out of them, one person who takes the initiative and the first step towards that plan will always succeed. This is what I've learned in my life so far. I'm almost 63 years. And when you are determined, you're focused, nothing is impossible. Believe me, nothing is impossible. You just start it and you will do it. And in the Indian context, it amounts to getting the jobs, sitting down for your examination, sitting down for your ambitions. What do you want to achieve? You can achieve provided you have the focus, the determination, and the will to do it. The will is very important. And don't make plans which are non-achievable, and don't talk big amongst your friends and then don't do anything about it. So I think that has been the secret of success. And like General Chauhan made one point, focus. What you want to achieve, you can achieve. Okay, so I would like to tell all the students who are listening to us that keep your head above your shoulders, think what you want to do, and go the hell for it. And you will be able to achieve it. Coming to the finances part, if you want to pursue your life outside in foreign countries and studies or whatever, everything happens. You got to go out, you got to take study loans, you got to do your part-time jobs in the evening, you got to save money, you got to go through hardships, and then you get onto your track. And once you are on the track, then you graduate from a second or a third class compartment to AC2 tier, AC3 tier, then you start flying and you start whistling. So rest, everything what General Chauhan had mentioned, keep that in mind, keep your focus, look up, be good, be happy, and keep smiling. Thank you very much for this opportunity and great session we had.
Thank you, sir. I mean, listening to you both, I'm finding it difficult to speak. Really. I mean, I'm speechless. I mean, I don't know what is it the next thing I should say, but I can really say on behalf of everyone And I personally, that, listening to your experience of 40 years, respectively, both of you, the way you have expressed yourself without any fear, you have been so to the point. I think we all are going to definitely try to make changes in our life and follow your advice. And like I said earlier, there's so much learning in what you have expressed. And once we leave, we are definitely going to be better informed and more sensible beings. So with that, like I said, I'm falling short of words listening to you both. I would now request Dr. Amit Bhalla to please thank the guests for being here before we can close the session.
It was a very nice session with you, Janil Mehta, Janil Dushyant, and Ritika for coordinating it so well. And I agree with you, it is not easy, to put up a question and then think for another question with once you have two starboards sitting there with you. So it was a nice practice session with both of you, sir. And hope this was a very nice suggestion which was given by Janil Dushyant that even the girls should think of moving to the services. So maybe we can connect with our Department of Student Welfare as well and try and motivate few students from our campus who can think of joining the services. That's what I think this interaction what we had. It's indeed a pleasure to listen to you, and I hope that we'll one day get an opportunity to maybe where General Dushyant can do a nice fishing and he can get a fish. Mehta can cook it for us. Look forward for that opportunity with both of you. It was a wonderful experience and connecting with both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And now, on behalf of everyone who's been a part of this show and everyone who's been listening to us, I would once again like to thank you for your time, sir. We have been bothering you so much to put everything together. We so many calls and so many times that we've been bothering you, but thank you so much for being here with us. And we really do look forward to meeting you in person when things settle down. Thank you.
Very much.
And with that, I would request all the guests, they can start logging out. I shall stay here till the meeting is on. I shall wait for everyone to leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
God bless you. Thank you very
Bye,
much.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ranjan. Thank you, Talwar. God bless you. And very well conducted, Ritika.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Pradeep. Well done.
Thank you very much, sir.